It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. Welcome back to Restless, a little REM for you right here, classic 90s tune. I'm Father Joseph, priest of the Diocese of Bridgeport, and you've joined myself. Of course you've joined myself. I just introduced myself. Diane, Lauren, and Matt, as us young adults restlessly seek the face of God in the midst of today's crazy and mixed up world. And boy, we live in a crazy and mixed up world, right? And this world is going to come to an end at some point, sadly or happily. I'm not sure how you feel about it. But as Christians, as Catholics, we believe that, and we profess that every time we say the creed. We say that Christ will come again, and it's in our liturgy all the time. It's just something we believe. But what do you think about when you think about the apocalypse? Like, is it overwhelming? Does it frighten you?
I think it's tempting to be. Yeah, it's tempting to be scary, because you've got like the Hollywood version, which is just like everything goes up in flames at once. And, I don't want to go up in flames. So, yeah. Yeah, I think anytime I do think of it, if my original reaction is that maybe that of fear, I have to like calm myself down a little bit maybe,
My reaction is usually saying, Lord Jesus, come soon, but not before Friday because I've got plans. And that's the thing. I'm always like, yes, Lord, come, but then but next year, but maybe later.
Yeah.
I think the unknown just in general is scary. So, we don't know what's going to happen with our lives. We don't know whether the end of the age is going to happen while we're alive. But just in general, I think it's a natural human sort of emotion, I guess, to be afraid of the unknown. And the apocalypse is sure the unknown. We really don't know how that's going to play out.
It certainly is, because you read the book of Revelation, and it's not a play-by-play. It's very symbolic, and
yeah.
I don't know. You study theology. Did you study the book of Revelation?
No, we have not yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm waiting for the Bible in a year to get to the book of Revelation
Yes,
to
definitely.
get a better understanding of that for the first time in my life.
Yeah.
Have you been following that podcast?
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't. You should only follow Restless.
Well, I follow Restless too.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
If by following you mean like 85 days behind, then yeah.
No, I feel like I only have, fragments of what the apocalypse is going to be and the second coming of Christ. And I'm sorry if my voice sounds weird. I kind of lost it right before we met to record today. But I have been to the Holy Land in the Valley of Armageddon. It's like on the way to Mount Tabor. And we had this, discussion on the bus, like, we will all be gathered here one day together.
Wow.
And it's like, well, here, like literally this spot. And, you're like, what's it going to be like? I don't know.
That's a sobering thought.
At least I think that's what's going to happen. I may be misremembering, but.
Yeah. No, that's definitely a sobering thought. I don't know if any of you ever read the book called The Lord of the World.
No.
Pope Francis recommends it. It was written in 1913, I think, by some British dude. And it's about the end of the world. And it's really interesting because it has that battle between God and Satan on that Armageddon field. It's the very last scene. And I think it has the best closing line of any book I've ever read. Because the ending is like satisfying and it's not satisfying because they're fighting this battle. And then all of a sudden, God just comes and ends it. And the last line of the book is, and thus passes the world and the glory of it. And I always thought that's a powerful line. Like, wow, that's it. Everything we thought was so important just dissolved like sand. It's nothing.
It's all going to end. But we have the new heaven and the new earth.
True.
So I think about that a lot. What is that going to be like?
And what do you think?
And how are we going to live for eternity?
Yeah.
In our glorified bodies. What are we going to be doing? What will our relationships be like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so easy. Like when you do, to your point, Lauren, focus on like the new heavens and the new earth. It kind of changes the way that you think about all of the, problems and, issues that you have in your day-to-day life. And like, am I actually trusting in God's plan? Am I truly living in union with him and for him? Because at the end of the day, you're right. It's world dissolves in a second. Like, that's just it's a sobering thought, but it does help you to I guess focus on what's important for eternity.
Yeah, that's where eternity takes place.
Yeah,
that's where your mind's got to be.
Yeah.
Mine is so stuck here.
So, Father Joseph, you might have you might be waiting to ask this question, but why do you think that a lot of priests, in homilies and things, you don't really hear them talk too much about the second coming of Christ, and I don't know. I think some people are obsessed with the apocalypse and just, it's just like an excitement, or maybe it's the unknown. You want to figure it out. But why do you think that is, that people are not talking about that?
Well, truthfully, I think it goes all the way back to the Enlightenment. And because there was a heresy that arose in the Enlightenment that is still very prevalent in our church today. And it's a heresy called Modernism. And modernism is basically, in a nutshell, it's the denial of the supernatural aspect of religion. And you hear that a lot, maybe not so much in the circles that we run in, but in most Catholic churches, you rarely hear about heaven or hell or the afterlife or ultimate salvation or ultimate meaning. You really just hear about loving your neighbor here on earth and social justice and things that are very terrestrial, very earthly. Mm-hmm. And all those things are important, but obviously they're not goal. There's not the end. And so this heresy of modernism was condemned by the church over and over and over again, and it's still very prevalent, which is just basically saying the whole point of faith is just about here and now. And when it's just about here and now, and it's just about making people feel good and comforted, and you feel warm and fuzzy because you have Jesus in your life, then you're not really thinking much about the grand scheme of eternity and kind of what salvation history is leading up to, which is Christ's second coming. Have you guys ever heard any homilies on this? Or
from you?
Well, once or twice.
Advent. I never heard that as a kid growing up. Advent was always focused on Christmas. And then at St. John's, that's when I first learned this is also about the second coming of Christ. And I thought, wow, we should be talking about this more. But one thing I can say, though, is I don't know who said this, but when I was like a small child at church on Sunday, I knew about the second coming of Christ, and I would always be at Mass like, maybe Christ will come today. And in my little child brain, it was like Jesus would come through the doors of our church. And I had this uplifting thought about that. Wow, wouldn't it be great if he showed up today?
Yeah.
Right.
But when Jesus comes again, are you ready to see him? Are you ready to, be like, yes, Lord, welcome? Or are you like, dude, I got unfinished business. I got to go to confession. I got to do this or that.
Well, I think it's definitely something that you need to, it's really important to think about, because whether or not, hopefully you're in a state of grace and you're not in a state of mortal sin. I would just advise that everyone, don't wait till tomorrow to confess your mortal sin, because you might not have tomorrow. But at the same, even if you're in a state of grace and you're going to Mass daily and you're praying faithfully and everything, there's always that question I think that you have to ask is is my life completely conformed to Christ? And I don't know that anyone can necessarily answer that question. Do I completely trust in his will for my life? Is my will completely unified with his? There's always something to be there. There's always something more you can do.
That's true.
Yeah. I just, as we're talking about it, I'm thinking about that this thought will pop in my mind of what if it's soon, and as much as I don't know if the right thing to say necessarily, as much as I wish it wasn't, because it is a good thing that I'm getting married next summer. My thought immediately jumps to oh man, that is something that I'm really looking forward to, and so I often. And I actually think maybe the word is often, because it does happen probably once a week that for whatever reason that pops in my head. And I have come to a place where I say, whatever your will is.
Yeah.
Because I know that it's good that I'm looking forward to my marriage, and that's great. But if Jesus decides to show up on July 8th and get married on July 9th, then that's that, there's this submission, I suppose.
Do you want to move your marriage up like 6 months?
I tried to convince her for November, but yeah, I don't know. I think and just to go back to hearing about it in homilies, I think maybe I hear, I've heard, or at least maybe since being an adult and paying attention is the best way to put it, about, eternal salvation and having that be the goal. But I can't remember growing up hearing about the second coming of Christ, and even specifically as an adult now, that particular event, as opposed to just, this is for heaven.
Yeah. So, be straight up honest, right? Like, especially with what's going on in the world with wars and natural disasters and coronavirus. A lot of people have been talking to me about, I wondered if Jesus is coming soon. Has that, crossed your mind?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I think we're starting to see the steps towards the end of time. I mean, even if you just look at how people are giving up their freedoms.
That's true.
Isn't it that there will be less individual freedoms before the second coming?
I think it's safe to say that, yeah. So
I just think there are signs, and it's I don't want to jump in head deep, because there's always been people who thought, oh, it's going to happen now. It's around the corner. It's next year. I got to start.
Just in our lifetime, we had the year 2000, we had 2012, we had 2018. It was supposed to end all those times, and it hasn't ended yet.
Right, and there are the people that store up on the food and supplies.
That was my family. For Y2K, we had 3 months worth of food in our basement.
Wow.
That's funny.
It was great.
But I don't think we should jump to that, but just be aware of what's going on in the world, because we have been warned.
Yeah.
We know what's coming. So, all you can really do is get yourself ready, I think, personally. And if you are not ready to face God, that maybe says something about where your spiritual life is, because we are made to know, love, and serve him. Mm-hmm. This is our ultimate end. This is what our true happiness is. So if there's some kind of fear there, working on that now is probably what's most important for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it brings to light, just thinking about it too, a lot of the attachments that we have to things, created things. And so it's an opportunity to kind of purify ourselves from those. Am I loving God for his blessings and his consolation, or am I loving God for him? And is God ultimately enough? God is the fulfillment of all of our desires. So there's nothing on earth, whether a good marriage or whatever, if we're looking for that sort of security and happiness outside of him, it's an opportunity to kind of reflect on how much purification we actually need from those, even things that are good, just how goods can become disordered so easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
One. Go ahead, Matt.
I just was thinking about I and I don't want to mess it up, but I believe there's a warning from Fatima, right, that the final battle sort of between God and Satan would be over family and marriage, right?
Yes, that was Sister Lucia that said that.
And so when I first heard that, I'm pretty sure my next words were oh shoot, we're
kind of in the middle of it.
I know what's going on right now. And so when I, if any time this topic does come up, that's where my mind goes immediately, because we are living in it right now, 100%.
It is true that, this is really the first time in history that the family has been under such attack that I can think of. There's always been sin throughout the world. There's been murder and violence and hatred, but for the first time when girls think they're boys and boys think they're girls, that's something really fundamental. And it attacks all the way back to Genesis, Genesis chapter 1, when God created us male and female. And so you see this image and likeness of God being totally deformed.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing Lauren said, I think, is a really good point. The end is not a moment, but a process. So there's several steps kind of leading up to the end. And one of those steps that we can see not only in Scripture, but also in the tradition of the church, is the Antichrist. So, first of all, what do you know about the Antichrist? And do you think he or she might be alive today? Is it a person? Is it an idea? What do y'all think?
I don't know very much about the Antichrist. I know that I think actually for a long time I thought it was, and again, probably as a younger person, but I think I thought it was just a secular thing. I thought it was a made up story, that like a Dan Brown thing.
I think it's absolutely real, and there's going to be a singular person that leads a lot of people away from the faith and the church.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the record, I'm not saying I don't believe it's real. I'm just saying that I don't think I realized it was real. Yeah.
I think the book of Revelation talks about this Antichrist ruling for 42 months. So I think that's an imitation of the amount of time that Jesus spent in his ministry.
Oh, interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah. So
It's true.
And the Catechism says that the supreme religious deception is that of the Antichrist, a pseudo-messianism by which man glorifies himself in place of God and of his Messiah come in the flesh. So, yeah, whether it's a person, but also I think it's just the spirit of the Antichrist too, right? Of like deification of self and pride and lack of trust in God and that like disunion, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, like not to get like overly philosophical, right? But reductionism, right? Is that what it is? Reductionism, maybe? Materialism, that everything comes down to atoms. Like there are people that have, I believe his name is Carl Sager, said, I'm just a group of atoms named Carl Sager. Like that is my origin, that I'm just a bunch of molecules.
Yeah.
And if that is not just outright denial, of any God whatsoever.
So it's really just modernism to its extreme, which is there is no supernatural.
Right.
It's just everything's just pure natural. I do not think that Andrew Cuomo is the Antichrist, but he did. Although more and more he's looking. No.
What a transition.
Sorry. But I just remember during the coronavirus pandemic when finally the numbers were starting to come down in New York, he got up and said in a press conference, "God did not do this. Science did this. We did this." And I just remember that statement just kind of jumping out at me. It's like just pitting God against humanity, as if we don't need God because we have science, because we have ourselves. And that's the thing. A lot of people think the Antichrist is going to be this mass murderer or somebody who's like violent no, it's actually going to be somebody who's not only very rational, so someone who's very well-spoken, somebody who's everyone respects, somebody who's, just nobody would expect them to be the Antichrist. And that's how they can deceive so many, is that they look, for all intents and purposes, like someone who heals the world, who talks about peace, who brings people together and warring tribes. And you're going to see all these good things that look like miracles, but they're only on the human level, not on the supernatural, divine level.
Yeah, and this whole idea of like separation from God, like the society today, I think just emphasizes so much autonomy and self-preservation. You have all these older women and men kind of doing faceless and everything. It's all about sort of like self-preservation and wanting to control things. And ultimately, I guess that is the spirit of the Antichrist and the times of this like utter lack of knowledge or belief in a dependence on God. He sustains them.
Have you ever heard of the transhumanism movement?
No.
So transhumanism is this philosophy and science whereby people are trying to transcend humanity by replacing body parts with digital body parts. So if you develop ALS or multiple sclerosis or something, okay, well, let's just take off all your limbs and put digital limbs on there that are controlled by your mind, so that you don't experience the effects of these diseases and things like that. And the idea is to live forever, which first of all would just really stink. I would hate that, living forever, but because life is great, but like after like 100 years, like it's kind of boring. I don't know.
It's a scary thought.
That's a weird thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But kind of that idea of the Antichrist. So do you think they're alive today?
I'm curious if the Antichrist knows they are the Antichrist. Because I've thought about that before. Like, is it if in that that idea that it's like a movement sort of, do they know that they started it?
That's a good question. It's a very good
if
question.
it were Andrew Cuomo. Does.
I think they could be alive today. Yeah, with what we're seeing, I just feel like society is changing rapidly, and it's just more and more pulling God out of everything. This culture of death, we're in control. There is no moral law anymore or natural law. It's like what we decide.
Yeah.
I don't think things are looking good, and I just really think that they can change a lot faster than maybe we thought or would have thought.
Well, just imagine 10 years ago. Could we ever foreseen what we are experiencing now?
No.
In 2010, 2011? I mean, goodness gracious.
Father Joseph, do you think the end of the age will happen while we're alive?
I think a big part of it we'll experience. And particularly that brings us to the next piece of this puzzle, which is the warning. Have you ever heard of the warning?
Yes.
And this one might happen within our lifetime.
Is that the
Also called the illumination of conscience.
yeah, everybody, like, it's almost, I always thought it was like everybody gets like the second chance almost, sort of. Everybody understands within themselves what they've done and their position with God, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so my understanding is the world is going to stop, and we will all have an illumination of consciousness. Where if you were to die in that moment and you were going to heaven, you'd experience heaven. If you're going to purgatory, you'd experience purgatory. If you're going to hell, you'd be burning, as if you were in hell. It lasts about 15 minutes long, and when I've heard this talked about, it's like if you think you're in an airplane and the airplane isn't going to stop, it's going to stop.
That'd be wild.
The entire world is going to experience this
Freeze frame.
at one time.
Yeah.
So then we all know that God is real and where you're headed. So I think after that, there's about 5 weeks until the second coming.
Something like that.
And
Yeah. It's
the confessionals are going to be packed. The priests are going to be stuck all day long.
Please make me a sandwich.
You've
and
said that
bring
before.
Me one.
Yeah. So I think about that a lot. Like, oh my gosh, what is that going to be like? And
Yeah.
trying to get myself to a state where I can just like not fall into mortal sin. So I'll be good whenever that happens, you know? But yeah, it's crazy.
It's kind of a wild idea. And
Is it biblically sound? Is this I mean, I haven't read Revelation in depth, you know? So is it alluded to in Scripture? Or even outright?
It is alluded to. It's kind of some of the more recent apparitions, particularly the one in a small town in Spain called Garabandal in the 1960s was a little bit more explicit about it. But you can read it in the writings. Like, for example, when Simeon takes Jesus in his arms, he talks about how the hearts of all men would be made clear. I'm blanking on the exact reference, but thoughts of all will be revealed. And some of the other saints, like St. Edmund Campion, wrote about it, and some other saints. There's some saints in the 4th century that talked about this illumination of conscience.
And I think it's also important to share what Jesus said to Sister Faustina.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
So I'm going to read. So write this: before I come as the just judge, I am coming first as the King of mercy. Before the day of justice arrives, there will be given to the people a sign in the heavens of this sort. All light in the heavens will be extinguished, and there will be great darkness over the whole earth. Then the sign of the cross will be seen in the sky, and from the openings where the hands and the feet of the Savior were nailed will come forth great lights, which will light up the earth for a period of time. This will take place shortly before the last day.
Wow.
So that's St. Faustina in 1930.
Yeah. Oh, sometimes I can't wait for that when I try to talk to people that don't have faith or don't believe in God, and you're just like hitting a brick wall. And I know I can't like reach people through the truth. Like that's become evident, right? I think we can reach people through beauty and maybe through me just like living as a joyful Catholic person, that they'll maybe be attracted to that or something, and like that might open their heart. But there's the truth right there. And it's like you could live in denial, but one day Jesus is coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's going to be blatantly clear.
Yeah, the truth remains true whether you believe it or not.
Exactly.
And you know, Flannery O'Connor, who was a great Catholic author from the 1950s in the South, you familiar with her?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's great. And one of the things she said that when men hear well and see well, they can distinguish different colors and can hear soft sounds. But when men are blind and deaf, they need to be shouted at. And it's kind of the point that we've gotten in our culture, that I think we're so deaf to the truth that, you know, when you hear a good sermon or when you even, you know, encounter reading a good spiritual book, a lot of times it just goes over people's heads because they're just so deaf, so blind. They need God. God needs to just shout. It's got to get our attention.
Yeah. That's kind of like the when people bring up like the problem of pain, you know, in you know, how could God exist if there's so much pain? I believe it's C.S. Lewis, but it might not be.
I think it is C.S. Lewis, yeah.
Yeah, that he says, you know, God whispers in our joys and speaks in our normal, you know, our everyday life, but he shouts in our pain.
Yeah.
He is shouting. You know, and so that whole idea of God making it so clear, so obvious. I mean, what a gift that is, though, right?
It is a gift.
What was the exact quote he said? What, the King of Mercy? Is that what he said? There you go.
It is mercy.
Totally, because he
Yeah.
could have just come and ended it. Boom, done. Wherever you are, you are.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a chance for us to see where we are and make a change.
Yeah, he holds us in existence right now. He doesn't even have to do right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think things are going to get very tough before the end of the times, right? Like the Bible talks about earthquakes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're already seeing so many different natural disasters,
Sure.
you know, crazy storms, hurricanes, flooding, all this destruction. And we don't know what's coming, you know? There could be things like that we've yet to see, right? That really cause a lot of damage, destruction, and death. But we can't live in fear, right?
Amen.
Have to remain hopeful for
Amen.
Christ and trust in Him.
One of the things I was thinking during last summer when we were seeing a lot of wildfires and things is that, you know, of course, people who are secular say this is man-made climate change. And I agree with them, but for a different reason. It's man-made because as human beings, we are supposed to be the stewards of creation. And when we are disordered in our hearts, that will have an impact on the order of creation. So it's not so much pollution as it is the pollution in our own souls, the sin that we are kind of wreaking upon creation. Not just, you know, okay, strip mining, but more than that, it's like our lust and our greed and our envy and our pride and all of the vices that we have that's causing the earth to just revolt against what we're doing to it. I don't know, just some thoughts.
Yeah.
No,
No,
that's great.
that makes a lot of sense to me.
I think it's just like you know, you focus a lot on fear of the end of the world, but it's such an opportunity. Like the more I'm thinking about it as we're talking here, it's really just an opportunity to, like, in heaven, ultimately what, like, our sort of, I guess, capacity for love for God is only going to be as big as what we develop on earth, right? So it's like, you don't want to wait until the last minute. That is a mercy for Him to, you know, like, give sort of that illumination of conscience. But it's like, wow, I'm like, it's such an opportunity to think about, like, what can I do in my everyday life, you know, to love God more, to trust in His will, and to conform my life to His.
Amen. So quick question, the last question. Is it spiritually helpful to reflect on the second coming of Christ?
Yes,
Yeah, I think
Yes.
so.
it should be.
I mean,
Sounds good to
I
me.
think even this conversation
Yeah.
was helpful,
Good.
you know?
Good. And I hope you listeners also found it helpful as well. That we are called in every age to be vigilant, looking for the signs of the times, as Christ tells us to be aware and to be awake. Also not to worry, but rather to put our trust in Him, trust in His mercy, and to make sure that our lives are living upright so we can welcome Him and not run in fear when He comes as King of Glory. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Restless. You can find us on 1350 Veritas Catholic Network, and you can 1350 AM, and also wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in next time. God bless you.